So thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I have the absolute pleasure of hosting today's channel webinar with Enable, which is one of our newest vendors on the block. And I'm lucky to be joined by Enable's Senior Sales Manager, Alias. And Alias, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really
Thanks for having
excited
us.
because Enable's platform is very, very intuitive, very easy to use, and disaster recovery is one of those aspects of business continuity that organizations just can't really ignore anymore. So it's really a very important part of many different verticals such as SecOps, operational technology, network security. So I'll let Alias introduce himself. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for setting this up, Marcus, and we're excited as well to be doing this. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. So for whoever's on the call, who I've not met before, thanks for joining. So my name is Elias Mansour. I am a, senior sales manager for Enable in the APAC region. I've been with the company since 2013, and then did various roles within the company before eventually moving to Australia in January 2020. Talk about a timely move. And this is now permanently home, and I look after the APAC market with a specific focus on Australia and New Zealand. Marcus will lay out the agenda. We'll definitely field some questions towards the end, and would love to connect with you all at one point or another outside of this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you again. Just a reminder to everyone, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them into the chat box while Alias is going through the slide deck. And also, if you want to watch this webinar again or a coworker has missed this webinar, it will definitely be recorded and distributed after this. So for today's agenda, we're going to be going over the Enable platform, SMB shifts into a digital landscape, and definitely how the Enable platform solves the small to medium business new data volumes. We're going to be discussing cyber resiliency, especially with the Enable platform. And like I mentioned, disaster recovery is a very important part of this. And we're also going to be describing Enable's channel approach and how they operate within channel distribution and with resellers. Definitely going to go through the reseller offering, what Enable offers, and why partner with Enable, the perks, the benefits, what's in it for you. And like I mentioned, we're definitely going to go through the product stack so you can get a better understanding of what Enable does. And towards the end, we've definitely got a Q&A. So just a reminder to everyone, please feel free to put your questions into the chat box. I'll either answer them as we're going through or we'll answer them at the end. So I won't delay. I'll pass it over to you, Elias. Let's start with giving a snapshot of Enable to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people in the managed services space know of Enable, but not so much in the end user space, which is one of the biggest reasons why we're doing this initiative in 2025. So Enable is a global leader in remote monitoring and management, in backup and in security. Globally, our revenue is nearing $460 million. The interesting part is, unlike a lot of companies, our revenue is not heavily weighted towards North America. Half of our revenue is in North America, the other half is global. And we have 25,000 partners that use our tools globally, a very strong presence in Australia and New Zealand. We have over 2,000 partners in this region, combining of managed service providers and what we refer to as IT pro, but what the market would refer to as end users. So these are usually organizations that have their own IT departments, and they more or less service their own IT needs. And traditionally, we've always sold to managed service providers. That's been our bread and butter for years. If you look at our revenues, it probably makes up 85, 88% of our revenues, with the remainder coming from internal IT departments or end users. But that is the part that we're looking to grow the most. Traditionally speaking, we've sold to end users either directly in English speaking markets, or we've sold to them through distribution in non-English speaking markets. A part of the approach that we're going to be taking, and big part of what forms the conversation today, is the shift in mindset, the shift in focus, the shift in strategy in selling to end users, and a big part of that's spoiler alert, is going to be via the channel and of course via Wavelink. So that's a little bit of an overview there. I can keep carrying on, Marcus, unless you wanted to add anything else there.
No, please continue.
Cool. So why are we doing this? So like I said, our bread and butter are managed service providers, and we've been in this space since the early 2000s. So we've been around for over 2 decades. But something interesting started to happen as time went by. The managed service providers that we dealt with, of course, they got bigger. The market got bigger. But when we looked closer, it was also because they started to go upstream. They went from just the average seat that they're servicing being between 5 to 10, maybe 15 end users, sometimes 20, 25 on the higher end, to now they're entrenched in small and medium enterprise. So they started to go up market more and more. As they did that, the kind of end users that they serviced also began growing in stature. And at one point or another, our managed service providers started to get to the point in the market where those end users no longer really needed a managed service provider for all of their needs. They might have just needed a managed service provider for some of their needs. They were looking at tools to help manage their own environments and their own day-to-day functions, whether it's backup or security or day-to-day management. So we see the total addressable market in the end user space grow and grow over the years to what we predict is going to be, a $2.6 trillion market by the, end of 2028. And as you see on the screen, the needs of end users has changed over the years. It went from my computer is running slow and I can't print, and my computer is not working the way it should, to primarily break and fix and just internal L1 stuff, to more of a security focus, patch, antivirus, endpoint detection and management, to cloud. Everything is going to the cloud. When that big shift happened, to now everything from compliance to AI to we're using 10 different tools to help manage the environment. Not only are we dealing with a complex environment, but we're dealing with a complex tool set. How do we get them to all talk with each other? So these are the issues that we're seeing a lot of end users facing, and these are exactly what resellers kind of see as not only a challenge but an opportunity. And if there is one thing we're really hoping you get out of today is walking away with what new conversations can I start with my end users, or for whatever existing conversations we have, do we have something better for them moving forward with this enabled tool set? And it's great that eventually it's going to be a $2.6 trillion industry, but where specifically are the challenges and the opportunities going to come from? And it's in these three areas. I'm sure a lot of this is not necessarily a big surprise to anybody, but it's always good to see how it's segmented. Security and cyber attacks is by far one of the biggest problems, especially post-COVID. Incidents have skyrocketed. It's not coming from one vector, it's coming via emails, via phishing compromises, via backup compromises, password hygiene, endpoint issues. It's coming from so many different places. We've all heard of, the Optuses and the Medibanks and the big breaches, but there are thousands of these incidents that happen on a smaller scale every single day. So it's become a governance level topic for a lot of companies. It's not just, yeah, we probably should get antivirus. Now it's a lot. Hey, if we don't do this, we are going to get reputational damage. Our customers are going to suffer because of this. We're going to lose revenues. There's a lot more at stake, and part of that security conversation is backup. Not just the security around backup, it's how do you back it up? How do you move it? How do you restore it? So that's starting to come up a lot more often. And then something I mentioned earlier, which is the complexity, the increase in complexity. And not just complexity in the tools that end users are using. That's one aspect of complexity. Now there is hybrid work from home users, office workers, on-prem equipment, in the cloud equipment, security, like securing on-premise devices versus securing cloud-based services. Like the level of complexity in managing today's IT is significantly different than what it was even 5 years ago. So things are changing rapidly. I don't have to tell people on this call. I'm sure you see it quite often, but these are some of the challenges, and this is why we're strong believers that this partnership with Wavelink and for this new reseller motion will really open up a lot of doors, because we have different families of products that will hopefully help you address some of these issues in the market, whether it's security, backup, or IT management. And I know there's the left of boom, right of boom terms that are happening in the industry. I feel that's like the new marketing term, but really all this is to indicate is a lot of organizations are starting to shift away from the mindset of if an incident happens to what are we going to do when the incident happens. It's not pessimistic. It's one of those plan for the worst, hope for the best kind of mindset shifts that are happening. So people are thinking preventative measures and post incident measures. Left of boom, right of boom. So, for preventative measures, they're starting to think endpoint detection and response. They're starting to think SIM collection and information collection and intelligence. They're starting to think about can somebody provide a level of overwatch across our environments and hunt for threats that we simply don't have today? And they're going to their resellers and they're going to companies to try and sort out how to do this, because a lot of end users cannot just do this themselves. They don't have a 24/7 security operations center that they could just start from scratch. It costs millions. um, but let's say an incident happens. How do we recover our data? How do we keep it protected? Because next to people, data is the most important thing that the company has. So what do you do in the event of an incident? How do you make sure that you have that continuity? And whether it's before or after an incident, during this entire time, how do you maintain a good view on the entire environment to help you be as proactive as possible? And that's where you'll find that our three product families, the unified endpoint management system, the security, and then the backup, is really helping resellers with going to their customers and having these conversations and really knowing that one vendor is able to help them with those three components. Um, so how does this all tie into the channel approach? Well, this is a big shift for us, as I mentioned earlier. So we wanted to measure twice, cut once. We wanted to do this the right way. We understand trust and predictability and reliability and relationships is massive in this market, like with a lot of markets, but specifically in this channel motion. So we wanted to be consistent in our approach and our messaging. Uh, we want it to be transparent in terms of where we can help or what the expectations are, not just from what we expect of resellers, but what resellers can expect from us. But one of the biggest reasons why we're all on this call is the money, is making sure that this is also profitable for the resellers when they go and have these conversations with end users. This is a massive part of what we wanted to do, is make sure that it's actually profitable for you. To that end, we didn't want to overcomplicate the reseller motion. We wanted to make it simple, approachable, as little barriers as possible for resellers to start selling our products. What you see here between the registered, the growth, the premium, these are the different reseller tiers that we have. These are in Australian dollars. This simply indicates how much of our products do they intend on selling within their first year of partnership, whether it's $20,000 Australian worth of N-able products, 50,000 or 80,000, and that's what would dictate the different reseller tier. So to give you an idea, and this is obviously a very deal registration heavy kind of setup. So I know there's the authorized tier, that is also technically a tier, but we wanted to focus on the three primary ones that we'll find most people belonging to. So you'll find that there's a base tier. And frankly, it's not going to get anybody out of bed. 5% is not going to get anybody out of bed in terms of discount margins or discounts that you're going to get. But with deal registration, the picture starts to change. You're going from a total of or where is it? 20 to 25, 30, 35% discount that you are getting on the reseller tools to enable you and put you in a very good position to win end user deals. And this is if you supply the deal. If we are supplying the deal, we will be putting those through the channel. It just simply means that it's a lower discount margin because we're the ones that are supplying the deal. But you'll find that the majority of resellers, they'll definitely be motivated to want to register the deal, especially to get those extra discount rates to help them be even more competitive. And then there are incumbency bonuses as well too to help you with getting advantage over other resellers upon renewal time. So if you initially signed up your end user and it's renewal time, there's definitely a bigger advantage to you, the current incumbent, to get them re-signed. And I'll leave this up on the screen for a quick second here so everybody can have a look at it. But rest assured, if you reach out to your Wavelink rep or to Enable, we can also go through this with you on a one-to-one basis to really make sure that you have a confident understanding of how this model will work. Okay. So moving on to just slightly the more technical side to kind of give you an idea of where you're going to be able to approach end users. But before we get into the three specific tools, I wanted to paint just a very quick picture of how our Enable ecosystem, I know it's again a marketing term, but we call it the ecoverse. But where it fits all together. I know for a lot of software companies or vendors, they sometimes really want everybody to buy into the stack and they make it very proprietary and very locked down, whereas we tend to take a different approach. So at the very base level, if you look at a lot of end users, what do they want to do? At their very base level, they want to manage their physical devices, their users, their cloud applications, or their cloud loads. And they're maybe doing that in a variety of ways, but the way that you would do it with Enable is via unified endpoint management system. Some people call it a UEM. Some people call it a remote monitoring and management platform. Realistically, it's the same thing. It helps you with remote monitoring and management. It helps you with remote controlling into machines, into managing things like patches on them, whether it's Windows or third party. Helps you with deploying software. Helps you with automating different maybe maintenance workflows on the endpoints internally. With proactive remediation, multiple things. But what do you do after that? That's the base level. Well, most people usually want to start backing up the data. They might be using a tool already today. Chances are they might be using multiple actually to help them back up different kinds of data, and that in itself presents a challenge. But that's where Cove comes in, which I'll be talking about shortly, to help you back up not only device workloads, but Microsoft 365, not only to the cloud, but you'll also have local recoveries and different location recoveries. What's the next step after that? The next step after that is you want to start securing the environment. Sometimes it's actually the second step before backup, but they usually go hand in hand together. And that looks like a multitude of different ways, which I'll go through shortly. But you have endpoint detection and response just for the endpoint antivirus. And then you have maybe an XDR platform, or some people refer to it as a SIEM, to collect all of that data from multiple sources and really give you an idea of what's happening from a security posture perspective in the environment. And then, going all the way to things like a managed detection and response service. So there's somebody always looking at the environment to ensure that there's a level of protection, even when the end users themselves cannot look after that environment. So how does this all wrap together? Well, all of our tools talk with each other. There's a level of integration between the different tools. You could use them just by themselves if you have an end user that just wants security, they just want backup, they just want remote monitoring and management. Completely fine. But the more they use of our tools, the more that they're going to feed into each other intelligence and insights and data. And with those insights and with that intelligence, it's going to help you build more workflows and more automation across the environment, which will then feed this loop of automation and data intelligence. And this is great and all, but how does this work with other solutions? This is one of the key differences between us and a lot of vendors is we're not thinking of it as our product stack, our ecosystem, our way or the highway. The kind of approach that we're taking is all of our products work very well together, but you know what? They could potentially work better with some of the end user's existing tool stack. Let's say they have Fortinet, for example. Great. Our MDR solution can ingest data from Fortinet firewalls. Our RMM can help you with doing syslog monitoring with the Fortinet firewalls, port traffic, bandwidth analytics, etc. So if you've already done the hard work to go and, for example, sell Fortinet to this end user, well, it doesn't mean that our tools can't work with them. If anything, it could be a complementary solution to what they have. And you could build on that trust that you initially built with that end user. So they don't feel like you're coming to them with a, oh, well, you already sold me something that was the best. What happened to that? Is it no longer the best? So this is a way to really complement what you've already sold them before. And that's a very big part of how we want to work with MSPs, with end users, with resellers, is with other ecosystems. And you'll find that our APIs and integrations are very, very open in that regard. So kind of going into the actual tools themselves, and we'll be focusing primarily on three today. The very lightly on the unified endpoint management system, and then primarily on the backup Cove and on our MDR XDR solution. But a lot of people have traditionally known us as an RMM company, so I'd be, remiss if I didn't go through that a little bit. Our platforms are a multi-tenant platform. They could be a cloud-based platform, they could be an on-premise based platform, but really it's not just to help you with traditional device management. It's to help you with network device management, with cloud loads, with user management. Our RMM is trying to give you as much visibility, or trying to give the end user more specifically as much visibility into their own environment as possible, whether they're managing local assets or cloud-based assets or assets across multiple offices and sites, so to speak. And through this platform, you'll be able to manage Windows devices, Mac, Linux. You can do patch management for Windows, patch management for Macs, remote control. You could do remote control by having a shared session with the end user, or allowing technicians to resolve user issues without disrupting end users. So it really is a very broad, multi-tenanted, multi-OS, multi-function platform to help some of your end users consolidate maybe 10 different tools that they're using today, not necessarily into just one, but definitely helping them eliminate the tool sprawl that they have and really try to consolidate it. Essentially, you're giving them the ability of doing with maybe, let's say, 4 or 5 technicians what they would typically need 10 technicians to do, as an example. That's the real strength of our unified endpoint management system, and the ability to scale. This is one of the last things I'll say about this is we have RMMs that are good for maybe 200 seats, 200 devices, if it's a fairly small environment and they're looking for an out-of-the-box RMM. But what if you have an end user with 10,000 devices, 20,000 devices? They have 70 offices across the country. We also have an RMM tool for that to help you address that level of complexity. So you always have something that you can go to the end user with to help them manage their environment. But moving on to primarily what is going to be, let's call it the spearhead of this channel motion, and frankly, what resonates the most with end users nowadays is cybersecurity. And this is a big part of where we are trying to go this year as well, is becoming known as a cybersecurity company. And a lot of MSPs might know us as that, but frankly, a lot of end users don't. So our XDR MDR tool is our own tool. Last year, we partnered with a company called Adlumin exclusively. Adlumin is a managed cybersecurity vendor. We had the most successful launch of an initial product with Adlumin in 2024, so much so that we decided to purchase the company in December, just past December. And it is now our product. So wherever you see Adlumin, and we are keeping the Adlumin name, it is an N-able product. We are just keeping the Adlumin name because a lot of people know them by that name and by that brand recognition. So what is it? Well, it is, think of it as a two-in-one. One part is a software, it is an actual product, and the other part of it is a service. So there's a lot of acronyms in the market, especially when it comes to security. There is no shortage of four-letter acronyms. What we mean by XDR is what you might refer to as a SIEM or a SIEM. Really, it is a data collection platform. Typically, most SIEMs are collecting data via very specific sources. They might be collecting data via syslog. They might be collecting data via one specific software. But in general, they have like a very narrow range in terms of where they're pulling the data from. Our XDR has the ability of being vendor agnostic and collecting data from multiple points. It's a little bit difficult to see the writing here, but what it says is API, syslog, and agent. So these are the three different methods in where you can ingest data from. So you can go to your end user, and if they're just looking for a platform to collect data, they already have their own security operations center. You have the ability of going to them and selling them just a SIEM platform or an XDR platform. That in itself is actually very difficult to do in the market. And you'll find that a lot of vendors will usually either not sell it, or if they sell it, they will make it mandatory that you also combine it with their software or their service. So this is a way for you to separate the software from the service element of security, and give the end user the ability of ingesting data from via syslog. Let's say they had Fortinet firewalls or Sophos firewalls, from their endpoints via API. So let's say they have Jump Cloud or Salesforce or Azure data or M365 data. All of the above, they have the ability of collecting that data through the XDR platform. The XDR platform has built-in intelligence to be able to aggregate the data, enrich it with end user information, so it could tell Eli and Eli's device and combine it in one. So it has a lot of intelligence and analytics, and I know I'm using some buzzwords here, but it also is trying to form an idea of what is normal or abnormal behavior for not just the device but the user, and both of them combined, to give you some actionable intelligence that, hey, something wrong is happening here. So either the SOC or the internal team can action it. But in that XDR platform, there's also an automated response system. So even if you don't go with the service component of this offering, the software itself also has an auto response system where it can detect unusual behavior and act on it, on like a playbook of common threats, for example. So that in itself is also very powerful because it provides a level of remediation that end users might not even have today. They might be considering having to go to, let's say, a security operations center, or hiring a full-time analyst or security person, and those can be, of course, quite expensive. So resellers now have the ability through this offering to go to end users looking for security and really just compartmentalize if need be. You want the better together option? Great. This is where the MDR or the SOC comes in. This is a 24/7, 365 managed security service where they are leveraging this exact same XDR platform to hunt and investigate and remediate problems on the behalf of the end user. And that's the beautiful part about this, is it provides a level of transparency that is typically not really there with most other vendors, because you're either buying the software and the service together, but you don't have access to the software. It might be hidden behind like a concierge service, for example, or you're just buying the service and you get no access to data whatsoever. Whereas with this, the end user can log into the XDR platform, so they can have a look at what's going on in the environment, and that is the exact same data that the security operations center is leveraging to solve and remediate the problem. So you as a reseller will have the ability of selling the service and the software, or just the software itself, really depends. And this allows you to build in the future, once you have the platform in place, to build on selling them even more services that we're going to introduce into in the future, like pen testing services, compliance services, end user security training, and so on and so forth. So once the platform is there, it really allows you to go back to that end user and keep adding more and more value. And that in itself is fairly unique in the market. And how does this actually all fit? It's think of it as a bubble wrap on what they already have in their environment. This is the really advantageous part to resellers is you don't have to rip out everything that you have previously sold them just to have the conversation about XDR, MDR. You could look at what they have in the environment today, and if anything, use that as fuel, use that as a jumping board to also implement XDR and MDR, because we will use all their existing security stack as data sources. We'll have a look at their Sophos. We'll have a look at their M365 or their Google Workspace if that's what they're standardized on, or whatever hardware they have, and we will be able to ingest that and action it. Cool. The one thing I did want to mention is the ability, actually, this is one thing, is your end users can test this. So you have the ability of doing proof of concepts or proof of values with your end users. 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 security tools that, or XDR, MDR tools in the market do not give the ability to test or trial. It's this is what it does. You either take it or leave it, and you could take it at a small amount and then maybe buy the rest later, or you know what, just come to us when you're ready. Whereas you have the ability to actually do a proof of concept or proof of value with your end users, and this can greatly help you with, to use a sales term, your close rates or your conversion rates, because you now have the ability to actually show somebody value. And instead of this taking 3-4 days to set up and getting a consultant on site to advise and to do all of that, you can get our XDR MDR solution spun up within the hour. Within the hour, not within the days. And in a fast-paced environment, I'm sure a lot of people on this call have sometimes won and lost interests from certain end users within literally the span of a day. So this can make the difference between you really getting your foot in the door and not. And moving on to wrap up on the product side of things is Cove Data Protection. This is by far one of our fastest growing products over the past 5 years at this company. This is a product that at one point was known as IASO. It's been around for over a decade at this point. It's what you today know as Cove Data Protection. It is a cloud first, but not cloud only backup solution. And how does it stack to the Veeams, to the Acronises, to the StorageCrafts of the world? First and foremost, those are good solutions. They are reputable solutions. They are present in the channel, and they have been present in the channel. And frankly, they have their own merits. So there's nothing wrong with those solutions. They made sense at the time that somebody picked them. But frankly, a lot of them were also solving the problem of their time. To take, this is not pointing the finger at anybody at all, but like you take Veeam, for example. Veeam is a titan in this space. They're very well known and they have that pedigree. More or less, though, they're still trying to solve on-prem based issues. They're not what people think of as a cloud-based solution, and frankly, that's what the market is thinking about today. The market is thinking cloud. They have been thinking cloud. They're not thinking more on-prem. So, this is the problem that we're trying to solve today, is we're moving from the days where the thought process was image-based solution, on-prem. How do we reinforce the on-prem? How do we bolt multiple on-prem appliances together? How do we then send the data to the cloud? People nowadays are thinking, how do we just go straight to the cloud? Everything is going to the cloud, so why do we still need to think in on-prem? And this is the problem that Cove is solving. And frankly, that will make it a lot easier for resellers to have a truly differentiated solution compared to, let's say, the Veeams of the world. So how is it actually different? How is Cove? it different than, let's say, something like Veeam or any other image-based solution? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it is cloud first, but it is not cloud only, which means the primary replication is going to happen to our cloud. We use Equinix in Sydney. That's where any data in Australia or New Zealand is backed up. It's going to go to the cloud. And then once it's in the cloud, which, by the way, we encrypt and deduplicate, and we encrypt at rest and in transit. It doesn't mean that the cloud is the only place that the data has to live. The data can also live locally. It could live in the customer's environment. It can live in the customer's environment and in another a destination or another location for like a standby image kind of function. So you'll have the ability of having multiple copies of the data, but the main one is always going to be in the cloud. So your end user doesn't have to worry about an on-premise setup. You don't have to worry about pitching them an on-prem setup and then having to source the hardware and then having to link the hardware together for them and then have to educate them on what they need to do to keep it, patched and maintained, and having to, get quotes from for the end user to get quotes from a bunch of different people that are also selling the same product. This is truly differentiated. You can back up devices, you can back up Microsoft 365, you can back up multiple data sources. So all going to the cloud. Once it's in the cloud, you can recover it via different methods. You can recover it from the cloud. You can recover it from the local copy. You can recover it on like a proactive standby, hot standby kind of environment if your end user has that as well too. These are all options that are possible through Cove, but you don't have to architect from the beginning on-prem. And that can cut down your sales cycles tremendously because it doesn't have that complexity of that setup. From a security perspective, the multi-tenant dashboard that we provide, which by the way, you could use to back up your Microsoft 365 and your device level backups, it's completely off-prem. There's nothing to compromise locally. It's in the cloud, two-factor authentication enabled. The data is encrypted at rest and in transit. Your end user doesn't have to overcome that hurdle, and that's one less sales obstacle for you to overcome. We include the storage in the cost of the software. So think of it as a trinity. You have the backup software that you would deploy on machines. This is an agent-based system. You have the storage that we provide you, and then you have a multi-tenanted dashboard. And that's what your end user is getting when they buy it from you. It's an all-in-one solution, and you no longer have to now break up the 3 different pieces separately and then have 3 different categories of problems that you have to deal with. As this is not like a planned thing here, but to give everybody on the call an idea, the close ratio for Cove deals, like resellers, like their close ratio is north of 30%. 30% with sales cycles of anywhere between 30 to 40 days. That is unheard of with a lot of backup sales cycles because of the simplicity and the comprehensiveness of the tool. And the best part of all, as I was mentioning earlier, is you do not need an on-premise presence. You don't need to have an appliance. It's optional, but you don't need to have it. Cool. So wrapping up here on my part, and happy to field questions. Overall, what are the partnership benefits, and to do this to begin with? So the products themselves are solving real problems. That is probably one of the biggest things, is that you're not trying to push a bad product uphill. You're not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. These are very well-known products. They're trusted products, and they are solving real problems in the market today, problems that, as we were talking about earlier, end users are actually facing when it comes to cybersecurity or complexity or data management. The products are easy to deploy and test. None of our products are off limits for testing. If you have an end user that wants to test all 3 of our products, they could test all 3 of the products simultaneously. That's not a problem. So you can actually show them the value and reduce your time to value a lot quicker and help you close those deals a lot quicker. And speaking of closing deals. Not only do you have the Wavelink team, of course, but you have the Enable team as well. I can't tell you how motivated everybody is to really not only help Wavelink, but help the resellers themselves get in front of these conversations and help you win business. I'm talking engineers. I'm talking my sales development reps that are happy to cold call and try to line up opportunities for resellers. I'm talking about, my account executives that will happily jump on a sales process to, help resellers, quote unquote, learn the ropes when it comes to the Enable sales cycle. Um, Everybody wants to help. Everybody really wants this to work, and that kind of falls into our channel focus. Is we will be routing deals through the channel. As we wrap up the systems and the more the mechanical side of things, everything will be fed through the channel. But to wrap up, it's the profits are really good. We're talking top of funnel and bottom of funnel. Bottom of funnel are the discounts that we were just talking about earlier. The aggressive, healthy discounts for the products. Top of funnel is these are simply differentiated products that stand out compared to the rest. Um, there are no tools like Cove in the market. There are tools that come close, but there is not something exactly like it. That's something that could really help you capture the attention of the customer that's just used to StorageCraft or used to Veeam. The XDR MDR solution, you could trial it. It's vendor agnostic. It's a service and a software. That in itself can sometimes help you uncover opportunities that were a non-starter before because it didn't meet what the customer was looking for, top of funnel. So that's the thing I'll wrap up is the profits is, we're thinking of both ends of the spectrum. It's how can we help put you in front of more conversations and how can we help you win them a lot more. And hopefully the conversation today has given you some light on that. But I'll hand it back to Marcus so he can maybe go through a couple of questions if the crowd has any.
Thank you for that, Eli. That was a great in-depth overview, and I think there's a couple of points that I definitely want to touch on just for the audience, and I know a couple of people did join late, but that was great. Thank you so much. One of the questions that has come through is what's the average deal size look like, and how easy or hard is it for a reseller to hit that registered growth or that premium level?
Very good question. So for uh, if I was to break it down by product, I'm just pulling up my calculator so I could annualize it here. So to give you an idea, the average remote monitoring and management platform deal size, we're looking at north of 18,000 US. So I mean, judging by by the currency rates, depending on when you look at it, that would be, let's say, north of 27 grand. When it comes to backup, backup is one of those products where you can either do a complete displacement or you can capture just part of the backup, so it can vary in range. But if I had to pick like a number, I probably would say around, just doing the math here, around 12, 13 grand Australian. And then for MDR, um, to be transparent, the MDR deal sizes for end users, I would say they're probably north of around 30, 35K, but it's only now that we're starting to really get the MDR into the end user market. Predominantly, the deals have been through managed or two managed service providers, and it's been just slightly less than that size. So they tend to be quite healthy. Like it's not, we put the targets in place to make them achievable, not to make it hard to hit, right? Especially as you're getting this motion going, the goal here is to build awareness in the market and make people excited and motivated to go to market and try to get these deals. So very achievable.
Hmm. Another important point that I think you briefly touched on, but it's something that's very important to some resellers because it can sometimes make or break some deals for some people is compliancy with both, I guess, the MDR, XDR, and the other solutions in the enabled portfolio. How does the solution help businesses comply with that industry regulation and standard? Because, a lot of the times we see that it can sometimes be a lack of awareness, sometimes it can be a financial struggle. How does the Enable platform, I guess, support that compliancy for, an end customer?
A good question. I guess compliancy is a very broad topic, so it just depends on what is somebody looking to achieve when they talk compliancy. If they're looking for reports that simply tells you is the environment compliant or not, XDR, MDR has some elements of that, but to be very upfront with everybody here on the call, it does not address any essential 8 compliancies out of the box. As in, there is no report that out of the box will tell you, yep, this environment is essential 8 compliant or not. What it does, though, is there are a lot of elements in XDR, the XDR software, because it gives you so many insights about the environment, is it can tell you where are some areas of compromise, user accounts, stale passwords, dark web monitoring, maybe firewall or network vulnerabilities. So there's a lot of elements of XDR that can give somebody visibility into what they need to do to become compliant, but there is nothing out of the box right now from day one that will tell you, yep, you are essentially compliant or not. So it's a bit of a gray area answer, but I would say it's more to give you an idea of what would make you compliant. If you have clients in the US, then there's PCI pre-built like PCI compliance, HIPAA as an example, like those tend to be like one of the bigger ones. NIST is another one, but nothing specifically for the Australian marketplace yet.
So I guess where we can, I guess, remediate this gap is how friendly Enable is with other vendors, such as, vendors that provide security operations tools and can feed all that information back in and report on that compliancy, which I think is a big thing for some people. How friendly some vendors play with other vendors, and Enable seems to be one of those vendors that plays very friendly with other vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's part of the vendor agnostic aspect of it. Like, if we're on the topic of security with XDR, we don't require that you use proprietary endpoint protection to use the XDR. We don't need that you use proprietary hardware either. Like, a lot of companies are not necessarily looking for a tool to make them compliant. A lot of times, what they're looking for is the visibility and not having to use 7 different tools to do it. And then they're usually using something compliance specific to help them become compliant. But how do you become compliant if you don't even know what is it that you need to fix? And this is really where the XDR strength comes in, is in giving you that visibility and that knowledge, because it's taking in data from so many different places. It can even give you a scorecard. Like, it's not just going to give you the raw data. It's giving you intelligence around, this is the environment out of a score of 100. Where do you rate, and what do you need to do to get it to 100 based on these compromised areas, as an example? And sometimes those areas align with essential 8, and sometimes it's not essential 8 related, but it's still something that is important to uh, com- the composure or the security posture of the environment.
Hmm. Another question that's come through as well, which I think would be great for us to kind of clarify surrounding Cove. Does Cove provide unlimited storage, Eli?
It does not supply unlimited storage. However, the storage is pooled at the end user level. So it's interesting you ask that, because a lot of times people ask about unlimited storage because they're also expecting the data to take up a lot of space. And without getting into the nitty gritty, like the way Cove does backups is that it's a file and folder level backup. So just to begin with, because of the by architecture, we don't use anywhere near as much data as traditional solutions. To be more specific, we use 60, on average, 60 times less data than our nearest competitor. So because we don't use a lot of data, we also don't need a lot of data storage. But a lot of something that a lot of people don't know is we don't actually count the data as what are we storing. We count the data as what are you selecting to be backed up. How much it's using in our cloud is not relevant because that's not what actually is counting against your data pool. But anyways, in a less roundabout way, we don't offer unlimited storage. We offer a fixed amount of storage per device, but that amount contributes to a data pool in the end user's account. And then that pool could be used across however many devices they have. So to give you an idea, you're either getting 500 gigabytes per server or 2 terabytes per server, depending on what price plan you're on, towards your pool as an end user. So if you have, for example, 10 servers, you'll have 20 terabytes of data, and those 20 terabytes can be used across however many, doesn't matter what server is using what. So it's a very generous allowance, and you'll find that the majority of our customers don't actually ever go over their allotted pool.
Cool. And I think that's a great way to clear it up as well, just to give it like a good high level overview. Another question about the platform that's actually come through registration. How many copies of the customer data do you actually store, and who holds the encryption keys?
Good question. So there's one primary copy, which is going to our cloud. In saying that, you can have other multiple copies. So kind of back to my earlier point, the main copy is going to our cloud. If you then want to have a local cache of that data, which is mirroring exactly what's in the cloud, no problem. You could bring your own NAS or SAN or USB drive, and that will be exactly what's in the cloud. The biggest difference it makes is if you wanted to do a restore, you could just pull the data from the local storage instead of having to reach to the cloud to do it. On top of that, you can also have a disaster recovery location, for example, where there's like a standby virtual machine that's ready to boot up if the primary server goes down. So it's like a disaster recovery copy that's elsewhere. It could be in the end user's environment. It could be in another environment of the end user. It could be in their Azure as an example. So it could be in multiple locations. But N-able specifically holds one copy, which is the one in our cloud. In saying that, we do something quite unique. A lot of people on this call probably have heard the term immutable. An immutable copy, as in a copy that cannot be altered or edited or changed. And usually that the onus is on the end user to do that. Really what it is they have a local copy of the data, which is the primary one, and then they have another copy of the data, which is copying the copy. So it's like a fail safe. But the onus is on the end user to do that. And there's an extra hardware cost and an extra maintenance cost to do that. N-able provides built-in immutability. We call it fortified copies, but really what it is that we back up whatever is in the end user's environment for them. Like we back up the backup, and the copy is separate from their command line interface. It's separate from their API. It's separate from their graphical user interface. They do not have access to that copy whatsoever. We hold onto it in the event of a complete and utter disaster or total compromise. We are taking a backup of their environment every hour, and we are storing the backup for 30 days. So in the event somebody says, somebody hacked into my Cove, something happened, they deleted all the backups, it's, I'm losing my mind, what do I do? They can call N-able, and then what we could do is we could restore the data for them from that fortified copy that the bad actor would never have had access to. So technically speaking, officially we store one copy of the data, but we're fortifying it by backing up that backup as well. So you could consider it 2 copies of the data.
Cool. And for the resellers on the call, I guess, are there any ingress or egress costs that are associated with the platform as well?
0. There's none.
Completely zero.
Nope, nothing.
Perfect. We've gotten a lot of questions through registration, and being conscious of time, I'll try and get through as many as possible for the audience. Um, what is the actual maximum retention that's allowed through the N-able platform?
So it's customizable retention for devices, and it's fixed retention for now for M365. So for M365, it's 7 years, 7-year retention across all data sources. So SharePoint, OneDrive, the channels and Teams, and of course the Exchange. When it comes to device level backups, it's customizable. So it's like a grandfather, father, child kind of setup. So the last backup of the day can be retained for 30 days. The last backup, or sorry, every single backup of the day is retained for 30 days. The last backup of the day for up to a year. The last backup of the week for up to 3 years. And then the last backup of the month for up to 5 years, the last backup of the year for up to a decade. So if you're looking for like the maximum amount of time that you could retain the data, the answer is technically 10 years.
Awesome. Just being conscious of time, I think we're going to wrap up. But before we wrap up, just want to remind everyone this session has been recorded. So if anyone has missed the session or you'd like to watch this again for some reference, we will be distributing that out after this call ends. But I want to thank you, Eli, again for joining us. That was an amazing overview, and it really gives a really good in-depth analysis of the Enable platform, but also the reseller model. Thanks everyone on the call for joining. Very much appreciate all the questions that have come through. If you do have any follow-up questions for either myself or Eli, please feel free to send them through to either the training inbox or the pre-sales inbox, and we'll definitely get back to you with an answer. But for now, thank you so much to everyone who's joined the call. Thank you, Eli, once again,
Yeah, guys.
and appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.